Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome to the stream. I hope everybody is doing well tonight. Getting a little bit of a late start tonight. Had a few technical problems I ran into getting the stream going, but I think we're good now. Looks like we're live across the board. Let me just check on. Yeah, okay, I think we're good. Trashcan, how's it going? Good to see you. Welcome. It has been a bit, actually. Yeah, how are you doing? Coffee and Coding, good to see you. Binary Block, good to see you as well. Welcome. All right, so before we jump into the actual stream, I do want to just take a quick second and thank the supporters of the channel, beginning with our elite partners, which is, in this case, Javier, rather, Olazaran. I always mess that up. I'm sorry about that. Javier Olazaran. And our partners Furkan, Tokan, and Gerbolis Inc. Thank you guys very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. I'd also like to thank all the other supporters listed here on the screen. They are a combination of the other tiers of support over on YouTube, memberships, Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for your support. It helps me cover expenses having to do with the channel, such as hosting, license fees, things like that. So, of course, this channel and thus this project would not exist without all of you out there, the viewers, whether you're catching this on VOD after the fact or whether you're here live on Twitch or YouTube. Thank you guys very much for tuning in, being a part of this project. It means a lot to me. So you guys are what makes the project worth it. All right. Let's see. You got notification from Twitter after it getting back from Brazil end. Now, is it available in Brazil, or is it still like shut down? I haven't kept up on that, admittedly. I am doing well. Thank you for asking. It is back. Okay, well that's good, I guess. Good and bad, depending on your view of Twitter, right? But yeah, we're going to be continuing tonight where we left off last night, where we kind of ran into some things regarding the way that some of the stuff is named, and something that we need to change in our materials. So right now we have this sort of concept of a K-resource material, and anytime we actually acquire a material, we simply use that K-resource material or a pointer to it wherever that is acquired, right? Which is okay, but it's not going to allow us to make individual changes to instances of that material. And so we kind of got talking about material instances, and material instances kind of would wind up using, sort of the shader scope local, or what we've called shader scope local up to this point, in terms of descriptor update frequency. And then that got a little bit weird when we started talking about shader scope instance, which is kind of an old leftover thing from early on in the series, in the tutorial part of the series, right? And so we kind of got talking about this, and we're like, you know what? Shader scope probably doesn't make all that much sense in retrospect, right? It made sense when we initially wrote it, but things have changed so much now that it doesn't really make all that much sense anymore, because we're not really talking as scope so much as update frequency, which is really what we're after, right? So we're looking at replacing shader scope with update frequency, which has the same number of entries, right? They will retain sort of the same concept as they do now. They'll just be named differently. And it's really just a switch of mental model and how we think about it, right? So global will become per frame, right? So it'll be shader update frequency per frame, right? So that's basically once a frame. And then what we now call instance will be essentially per group. And what group is basically could be like a group of materials, right? So wood would be an example of a group. Metal would be an example of a group. And then per draw would be where we have individual levels of updates. So Maybe the metal's got a certain tinge to it, right? Or the wood has a certain saturation value or something we want to add or modify for one particular instance of that in the world, but not across the board, right? And so we kind of came up with this shader update frequency to replace shader scope. And so that's what we're going to take a look at tonight. In most cases, it's going to be a simple drop-in replacement of shader scope versus shader update frequency. However, we are going to have to rename some internal things too to not reference instance anymore, but instead refer to that per group, right? So we're going to have to change some stuff, but this will allow us to be a lot more clear when we're talking about material instances versus what a shader scope instance is, which won't exist any longer, right? So it'll kind of separate the two, and I think make things a little bit more clearly. Let me see. Miss the hell out of it. I use it a lot to see nerdy stuff. Yeah, I get that. I use it for the same thing. Tamandua was actually here last night. So yeah, he might show up in a little bit. He tends to show up like halfway through the stream or so. So yeah, he didn't bring that up last night though. So, but yeah, he'll probably show up. Okay. So, I think tonight what we're going to do is we're first going to just remove this shader scope, right? I'm just going to nuke it. And that's going to tell us where, all of this is. You know what, though? Let me comment this really quickly. Let's get some documentation comments in here. So we'll say defines, oops, I need a brief. Defines shader update frequencies, typically used for uniforms, right? Oops. And then this one will be, let's see, I think I could just do this in one line. So this is going to be the uniform is updated once per frame. And then we can actually just paste this once per group. It is up to the shader using this to determine what this means. And then this is going to be per draw call, i.e. instance of an object in the world. All right. So we can get rid of this. And then we'll go through and we'll update everywhere that was using that to use the shader update frequency. I believe that's the only place it was defined, I think. All right. So, Pinyuk, how's it going over there on the YouTube side? Good evening to you as well. Let's see. Giannis is asking, I'm trying to learn C++ before delving into building a game engine. However, C++ is syntactically hard to learn. I agree with that. Should I try learning C to build a game engine? Do you have any advice? So normally what I tell people is you should learn both C and C++. But normally the way that I would suggest it is to learn C first, because it is a much simpler language and will help expose you to concepts that will make a lot more sense when you actually jump over to C++. So I generally say learn C and use C for a bit first and then jump to C++, because it'll help you understand C++ better. and you won't be trying to wrap your head around things like pointers while you're also trying to wrap your head around other concepts like templates and stuff like that. So if you're just starting out, I would say learn C first, then learn C++. As far as building a game engine, probably not what I would choose to be my first C or C++ project. I would probably work on something a little bit simpler than that, at least until you get comfortable with the language. And then once you get comfortable with the language, yeah, sure, jump in with it, and jump in with both feet and hammer on. So I would write maybe a couple of small command line programs, namely things around file processing, so reading and writing files, string processing, handling all kinds of different things with strings. Those two concepts alone will actually get you quite a bit of experience with C and C++. So that's kind of where I would start if I were you. I hope that makes sense. All right. So we have all kinds of stuff. Our shader serializer seems like it's pretty towards the top of that list. Okay, so these are all string warnings. We really need to go through and eliminate those at some point. So yeah, I guess our shader serializer is going to be the first thing that we're going to look at. Okay. So let's go ahead and look in here. And looks like we've got errors in the header file as well. Interesting. K asset types also has something that is bleating. Okay. So our shader uniforms are using shader scope. These should now be using shader update frequency. And we're going to say, we're just going to call that frequency. No more errors in this file, so we can go back. That's fixed. That file. Okay. Now, render type utils. Looks like it's got an issue too, so we'll go to that file. Looks like that's not used. We can go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, so we have this shader scope to string. Now, obviously, that's not going to apply anymore, so we're going to say update frequency to string, and returns the string representation of the given shader update frequency. Okay, and then this here will be frequency, right? Now it looks like we have the opposite back here. So we'll do shader update frequency, and we'll do shader update frequency there, and then update frequency there. We'll just replace these. There we go. Okay, and that should do it for that file. We'll also have to go back to the, let's see, we'll have to go to the C file actually and fix some of that stuff. Render type utils, because that's not going to compile otherwise. So we'll do shader update frequency. And then we'll rename this. Right. And then this will be update frequency per frame. Right. So this is going to be, I guess we'll say frame. And then update frequency group. Right. So this will be group. And then update frequency per draw. All right, and basically just have the opposite of this. Update frequency. And then instead of this global, we have, what did we say that was? Frame. So this will be shader update frame, frequency per frame. The next is going to be group, and update frequency group. And then finally we have draw. All right, so we can do update frequency draw. Okay, and then where we're defining, or we're defaulting to global here, we're going to say update frame per frame, right? We're going to say per frame, right? So that's that. And now in the asset serializer, we'll need to fix that as well. LaFoley, how's it going? Good to see you. Widgeler, good to see you as well. Nice. I like that. Triple Travin. 3 stream streak. Appreciate that. I hope you're well. Let's see. I started with C++, but now started using C. C really feels easier in the sense that things are more explicit. Exactly. I enjoy it a lot so far. That's one of the reasons I like it. But it's also a simpler language, right? So there's other benefits to that too. Compilation speed's a big one. But also your code is a lot easier, at least in my opinion, to read. Some of the overly templated code and namespace, like, what do I want to call it? Nested namespaces. Gets kind of hard to read after a while, at least, again, in my opinion. All right, so let's fix our errors in here. So this is... Why is this not a switch? That'd be a lot easier to deal with. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's fine. It's just... no, I'm going to make it a switch, because otherwise, this is kind of repetitive. I'm not a fan. So let's turn this into a switch. Move that down. Right, and then we'll do... case, and then instead of shader scope global, we'll do update frequency per frame. This uniform scope is going to be frequency. And then we'll do break, if I can spell it correctly. And then let's see, case, and we'll do shader update frequency per group. And break. And one more time, we'll do case. Can't spell tonight, apparently. Shader update frequency per draw. And break. And then otherwise here, we just have a default case, right? So unknown shader type skipping. Instead of doing that, what we're going to do is we're just going to default. We're just going to default to update frequency per frame. Right? Now I suppose we could bleat about that, but I think this is fine, right? So we have the frequency there. Now we have these names which no longer kind of make sense, right? We have the global instance and local. We'll need to rename those as well. Let's see. Apotham, good to see you. How are you doing? Namespaces are great. Person who created a nested namespace should be made fun of and used as an example of what not to do. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a single namespace is fine, but like when you have namespace, 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 it gets kind of ridiculous. Um, you're working on a very simple entity complication system. I love it. I love that phrase stuck around too. I think it was Coffee Lava that coined that phrase, but yeah, it's very funny. That's why I'm using Odin way simpler. Yeah, I like the concept of Odin. I like what I've seen of it. It's just yeah. At this point, I can't jump ship. I'm definitely sticking with C for this. Guess I got addicted to C++. I avoid stuff like templates when it's possible, though. Yeah, same. My C++ looks remarkably like C, which is why I just write C. Wait. What are you asking, Hickory? You pretend to make an OS series? No, I haven't made an OS series. Or pretended to make one. Definitely not. Writing an OS is not something I'm really interested in. I went through a phase, right? But yeah. The only way I would like the only thing that I'll say about that is I kind of miss the old school thing where you used to buy a game and you booted off the game itself on your computer, and so it kind of contained like a slim OS. That was kind of cool because they had to do that back then because you couldn't fit like Windows 3.1 into memory along with the game. But yeah. Low level, no complications. Kohi 2 can be written in Odin. Well, Kohi 2 is just going to be a version of Kohi, so I'm not going to do like Unreal Engine and throw out half my code. Well, I might, actually. But I won't make it a different repo. Yeah, Odin seems like it's pretty sweet. I would probably want to write like a couple of smaller applications in it before tackling something like a game engine. Could use Kohi with Odin, just need bindings. Yeah, so I think at some point once this engine becomes a little bit more mature, we could certainly do that. Because I think it'd be right. I think it'd be neat to write game code in Odin. All right, so we have this. Let's rename. Per frame array, and then per group array, and then we'll do per draw array, and then per frame count, per group count, and per draw count. All right. Makes no sense to kind of go through here and fix the stuff without actually renaming it so it makes sense in code. Okay, so it looks like we got a couple errors left in this file. Oh, did I screw up a... Is there an extra or missing brace somewhere? That's the one that matches that. I don't think I actually did mess that up, but I don't see any extra braces. But this is indented funny. So I must have someone. I must have one somewhere. I'm not seeing it though. So Kellos Music, how's it going? Good to see you. Welcome. Sorry for my English. I'm just a Brazilian high school student. No, no worries. I just wasn't sure what you were asking, but yeah, no, that's fine. We have lots of Brazilians here, actually. There's some Brazilian folks over on the Twitch side actually as well, so you might get on with them if you're able to hop over to the Twitch side. We actually have a pretty big Brazilian following here, so yeah, don't worry about your English. I did eventually get what you meant, so don't worry about it. It's all good. I always do my best to try and figure out, what you mean. So we're all good. Brazil domination, exactly, trash can, exactly. Apotham is not Brazilian, but did marry one. That's fair enough. As I say, your English is better than my Portuguese. Yeah, my Portuguese is rubbish because I don't know any. Although there's enough Brazilians in this channel that make me wonder if I should learn Portuguese, like Brazilian Portuguese, one of these days. Well, not one of these days, obviously. I can't learn it in a day, but yeah, I've thought about it. Thought about it more than once. Okay, so this is part of the for loop. So what is going on if uniforms? Where is the matching brace for this guy? All the way down there. That doesn't seem right. Let me undo this all real quick and see where I went wrong. So we had two. Oh, maybe it's this case that did it. Yeah. Extra one right there, I believe. No, right. Wait. That can't be the one. That's for the switch. Oh, I hate when this happens. Okay. I guess I'm going to have to start up here. So this all looks fine. This F block ends there, which seems wrong, because that's the end of the function. This should have another one here. Because this is all handling uniforms. So if we don't have uniforms, we skip that. And then here's where we output to string. Okay, yeah, that's fixed. All right. Well, looks like we have a warning. We don't use that one. Okay, let's get rid of that. No errors, no warnings. Perfect. All right, so build again. Move on to the next file. Resource handler material. Okay. I don't know if we were finished writing this file. This might actually get in our way. Okay, so it looks like we've got some stuff all the way up in engine.h. What does this... Oh, because this uses render types? Why does engine use render types? Do we need engine to use render types? I don't think we do. Can we get rid of that? I believe we can. Not sure why that was there. Okay. So shader resource handler material. Renderer front end, it looks like it's bleating now. Again, render types. Okay, so where are we? Resource types also has it. I'm not surprised that this is kind of referenced all over the place. We don't need that. Okay. So here is our shader uniform config stuff. So this is for actually loading shaders. So we just need to swap that out with update frequency. Is it time to say come to Brazil? That's funny. Oh, we have ads. Craft Car, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And if you can't hear me, I'll say thank you again in a minute when the ads are over. Hickory, you think that Portuguese sucks, English is better. I beg to differ, just because English is such a... It's such a mash together of so many different languages that it has like zero consistency. Enigma Dev, how's it going? Hello? La Folie, I like that Copert old emote. That's pretty funny. So we got about 30 seconds left on ads. Almost done with ads. I don't like coffee, but like Kohi, I think that's fine. Yeah, I agree with you. A good dose of Kohi is always necessary. You stream at night while Tokyo Spliff streams early in the morning. Yeah, I don't always get to catch his streams, unfortunately. I usually find out about him after the fact, but every once in a while I'm able to pop in there. So yeah, Hickory was saying over there that he thinks Portuguese sucks, that English is better, but I beg to differ because English has so many inconsistencies in it that it's no wonder that it's hard for people to learn, right? Like the example that I always use is, I guess we could use this, right? The example that I always use is the letter sequence OUGH, right? That letter's, let me make that font a little bit bigger. Let's go extra large on it, right? That is pronounced differently depending on what you're doing, depending on where it's used, right? So like, you have tough, whoops, why has it done that? I don't want to save it. You have tough, right? Which is pronounced like uff. Then you have cough, which is again like off instead of uff, right? And then you have dough, which is completely different. Like it makes no sense. Right? Like that's just one example that I always kind of fall back to, but yeah, that's the kind of stuff that like makes English super annoying. Even to me as a native speaker of English, that annoys me. But yeah, anyway, I digress. At least you don't have the A with the little, I forget what that thing's called above it. The little marker. That's one reason you guys spell things wrong. Yeah, I mean, that's true in some cases. I always like to bring to the confusion that is though, thought, through, and throughout. Yeah. That's a good one. Yep. I hate having to type color without a U in code. Yeah, I don't. I spell it with a U. That's just me. Let's see. I'm still new to this channel, so I haven't seen much of the resource system yet. Is there a concept of prefabs asset referencing other assets by some unique identifier? So we don't have prefabs yet, but it is on the to-do list. And this is going to enable us to actually do that. So eventually we're going to have a concept of... essentially what a prefab is going to wind up being is a scene all of its own. So we already have a scene, right, with like a hierarchy and all that stuff. A prefab is basically nothing but a scene when you think about it, right? It's got several different things like in it, like meshes, lights, that kind of thing. Um, and so when you break it down to brass tacks, all you're really doing is making like a mini scene that can be included in another scene. Um, so that is more or less the way that we're going to do prefabs is that way. I think my cat is batting around something in the background. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking in terms of prefabs, at least for like version 1, right? There, and there is classic. Explaining why English sucks. Yeah. Although I will say that's a pet peeve of mine when people get that wrong. It drives me nuts. But I get why people do it. So update frequency, and this is going to be the update frequency of the uniform. All right. That change is going to be central to a lot of other things, which I'm sure are going to break now, which is fine. We'll get through it. Okay, K-resource handler materials. We need to go back. And it looks like our shader system needs an update next. So once again, we have our actual shader uniform. So what we were looking at before was like a configuration for that. This is the actual uniform itself. So this is going to be shader update frequency. And we'll rename this to frequency. Right, and the update frequency of the uniform. And the reason I'm not using the LSP's rename here, to just do it across the board, is I want to see every piece of code that this touches and breaks. So that we can go through it, review it, and make sure that it's what it should be. The index of the descriptor set the uniform belongs to. Global instance invalid ID equals local. Do we have to have that anymore? If we have update frequency, why do we need a set index? Maybe we do. I'm not going to get rid of that yet, but I am going to change the comment. So 0 equals per frame, 1 equals group, and we have invalid ID here equals local. I'm going to change that to say per draw. And I suppose that this should say per group. Invalid ID though. I guess that's fine as long as it's not. As long as it's not a sampler, that should be fine. We may have to update that. All right. All right, so nowhere else in here. So now we can finally come back to this file, fix the various things that are wrong with that. Use of undeclared identifier. Oh, right. So this is code we actually haven't finished writing yet. So let's clear everything. I may actually have to finish writing this before I can finish the refactor, which kind of sucks. Okay. So, oh, wait a minute. We don't need, I don't think we need to do this. This should not be done here. We do not need to do this. So we can actually just delete that. Perfect. Okay. What was that? K-resource handler material. To be honest, all the Romance languages are quite consistent, except for the edgy of the or edge case of the family French. Yeah, that's true. I think French is actually where a lot of inconsistencies in English come from. Um, if I'm reading something and it says "not" in caps like that, I usually stop reading. I mean, fair enough. I have seen a lot spelled A-L-O-T on one word as a lot or a dash lot and a lot all one word. Uh, the technically correct version of that is a space lot. A lot is not technically a word. I don't think, unless they added it to Webster's, but I don't think they did. Let me see. I think it just forwards you to, yeah. If you search that up on Merriam-Webster, it just, if you type in this, right, without a space, it forwards you to that. Yeah, so that's the technically correct version. All the other versions are not really correct. Thank you for the follow. Also, thank you for the hydrate redeem. I do need that, so thank you. How do you cache your descriptor sets? So our descriptor sets are actually stored as, they're stored along with the shader that they belong to. So when we talk about a shader in this engine, at least in the Vulkan backend, that includes the graphics pipeline, all of the shader creation from source. It also includes the descriptor sets and the descriptors themselves, except in some circumstances where those descriptors are held elsewhere. But there's very limited cases where that's true. But do you mean a lot as in many, or a lot as in a place you might go or be able to park your car? Yeah, yep, that's true. A lot is a word with two L's. Yes, that is true. Like if you're allotting resources for something, yeah. Which is completely different again. How to link files in a project together using NeoVim. I always get a file not found error. So when you say link files together in NeoVim, what do you mean by that? Do you mean like, if I go here to the top, like how do I browse to this? Because that is just the LSP being set up to allow me to do that. Which we use LSP Saga and then the language server for C. Yeah, that's in fact here. Let me show you a link real quick. So that right there is a link to that contains an article that I wrote up with my NeoVim config. It's probably a little bit outdated. I haven't updated it in a couple months, but most of the changes I have in place are pretty small. So that might be what you're looking for. Telescope and NetRW is all I use. Fair enough. What do you think about RHI? I'm really bad with acronyms. What is RHI? Acronyms and I don't get along. I always mess them up. Yeah, no problem, Saris. The problem is my work also, like I write, during the day I write medical software, and all that is freaking acronyms. So like any acronym for like software dev, I have no space because I have to keep all those ones for work up here. Zaniac Games, how's it going? Good to see you. We are good here. We're just making some refactoring to our code base here with descriptor update frequencies and whatnot. Um, let's see. Singy, good to see you. How are you? Really hot ink. Yeah, there you go. Really hot ink. Acronyms just screw me up, man. I can never think of what they're for ever. Binding frequency. Um, I suppose. Well, it's not really binding frequency. It's update frequency. Because like you don't always have to. I mean, there's the whole update after bind thing, but sometimes you bind it, but you don't update it, right? So it's kind of binding frequency, but it's also update frequency, I guess. It's kind of both, but not. Okay. Where were we at with this one? Wait. What is an unused label destroy request? That's in resource handler material. 464. I guess because we never wound up actually having. We never actually wound up doing a go-to on failure. I guess we don't really need it. Okay, so material system C is where it's at now. Let's go to the top. I'm just going to remove things that aren't in use for now. We can always re-import them later. Material system acquire. Right. Okay. This is kind of where we were thinking about stuff before. Where, like, whenever we acquire a... This is kind of what led to this discussion. So whenever we acquire a material, the way that the resource system works is it has an internal counter, reference counter. So however many times we have referenced that material is kept track of. And every time we release a reference to that material, that counter gets decremented. When that counter hits 0, it releases the material and its resources. However, we are talking about material instances, and that whenever we acquire a material, what we really want to acquire is not the material itself, but an instance of that material. And an instance of that material would be sort of a separate thing with modifiable properties that only apply to that instance of that material. And so it wouldn't be things like texture maps. You wouldn't change that, right? But you might have like an ambient value that you set based off of, I don't know, it's the ambient lighting in the scene or something. Or another example might be maybe you've got a different environment map you want to use depending on where it is in the scene. Something like that, right? Or maybe you want to set that particular material instance to animate or something. Who knows? It would be individually controllable aspects of that particular material for that instance. And so the way we were doing this before was like, well, we could just have a local ID that gets output, but that means that every time we acquire a material, we then have to store also a local ID. And instead of doing that, that local ID could be, which is now going to be a per draw ID, is now just going to be part of a material instance, which we actually have not created yet. So that's, I guess, the next step. And I guess once we get this compiling, then we'll have to probably do all of the scope refactors in the Vulkan backend plugin. That's what I'm thinking. I was just reading what a descriptor set is, since you keep mentioning them. It says, a common and performant way of dealing with the limitation of 4 descriptors is to group them by binding frequency. So I guess we landed on the right term. Yeah, exactly. And that was, oddly enough, I was actually trying to abstract that concept from the front end, but then I wound up like circling back to that anyways, because that's exactly what they do. In the Vulkan backend, they are separated out by binding frequency, or I should say binding / update frequency. And I say update frequency because we always bind them, but maybe I should call it binding frequency. Instead of update frequency. It's kind of both, but kind of not. What do you guys think? Binding frequency or update frequency? I guess type 1 in chat if you think binding frequency is the way to go. Type 2 in chat if you think it's update frequency. You mean mapping when you say updating? So, whenever you are making a draw call, right, you have to bind whatever descriptors you're going to be using, right? You always have to do that. But if you're going to be changing the value, you also have to perform an update on that. But that doesn't necessarily have to happen all the time, specifically if that value hasn't changed, right? Sometimes you can get away with just, binding it once and being done with it. Use BDA. I don't know what BDA is. Again, acronyms. Sending uniforms to shaders. Yep. Exactly. The way I think of it, you bind shaders, but you update their values. Yeah, that's kind of why I went with the update verbiage. Hickory says 2 over there, though, which is, yeah, that's update. So maybe I will stick with update. Okay. Okay. I'm good with that. Okay, so material system acquire. I think we did actually talk about. Wait a minute. Oh, buffer device address allows us to pass pointers to GPU memory to a shader. Oh, right. Yeah, it's when you map memory. Yeah, I gotcha. Is that only supported in Vulkan? I'd have to look that up. Do you use Taylor reflections? I can't say I know what that is either. Taylor reflections. Let me look it up. I might be calling it something else. Okay, DuckDuckGo gave me terrible results. Let me try that on Google. Oh yeah, we don't do anything that crazy now. Shader reflections. Okay, because like when I searched for Taylor reflections, I got all kinds of stuff. Like I'm like, we're not doing anything like this. Like this is what popped up for Taylor reflections. So I was like, wait, what? Yeah, I gotcha. Typo. Okay, fair enough. I don't even know what that is. I'm not even gonna wrap my brain around it. Apparently, it actually is a thing, though. I'm not going to read about it now because I don't want to hurt my brain further. That was some word salad right there. Yeah, for sure. Maybe I should use it. It's a new rendering technique that I'm going to use. Oh, you don't care. You just like number two. That's funny. I could make a joke there, but I'm not going to. All right. So we have K resource material. I believe we actually started talking about what a material instance would look like. Yes, we did. So see, we already kind of put the local ID in here. This is actually going to be per draw ID. Is what that's going to be called. And then, so essentially what we're going to do is the material instance will still have a pointer to the material, but then have modifiable values within it. For right now, I'm not going to set any of those, but eventually we are going to be setting them. Whenever we need like per instance fields, right? Okay, so we have K resource material instance there. This is going to be, I think we can actually just return a copy, like just a copy of a struct. I don't think we need to allocate memory for this, right? So we can do material system acquire. It'll return an instance, which will contain a pointer to the material that we want, but also the local ID. So we don't need to do this bit. We can get rid of that. Oops. And then I guess we got to go acquire. This is going to be instance. And then this is going to be a pointer to, wait a minute. Pointer to the loaded material if found, otherwise zero null. That is a problem. Because this doesn't give us a way to indicate failure. So like if we search for a material and we don't actually find that material, we don't have any way to actually fail. So I guess what we should probably do is switch back to the old K resource material instance out instance, right? And do a Boolean return value, which kind of sucks, but is what it is. Our parameters are also out of date. State a pointer to the material system state. Oops. And then param out instance a pointer to hold the loaded instance if the loaded material instance if successful. And then return is going to be true if material was found, otherwise false. Okay, so there's still enough changes to this that it's going to break anywhere we try to use it, which is fine, because that'll just tell us wherever it needs to be used, right? So we'll return a Boolean there. We'll go ahead and add source material instance, out instance. All right. And let's see, so we have out resource. Okay, so we're, instead of returning this, which we don't want to do, we actually need to build out a material instance to return. Trash can, good to see you again. I know it's kind of late for you, so have a good one. Get some sleep. Out params for the win. Yeah, agreed. This is why multiple returns are so good. Eliminates the need for try catch and out params. Yeah, but I mean, I like out params though. I know a lot of people poop on them, but I like them. It's easy. I just name them out, and then it's very obvious from its name what it is. I think is it C# that actually has out as a keyword, which is pretty handy. If the ID is a K name, then yeah, that's tiny. So my problem with multiple returns is like multiple returns is really just nothing but a unnamed struct, right? So why not just return a struct? It's a little bit more. I guess it's not more type safe, but then you don't have your weird type declaration like in your actual function signature, like JavaScript does, which is really annoying. Dingus oriented chat. That's funny. Yeah, it is C# with the out. Yeah, I thought so. They also have a ref keyword, if I remember correctly. Because like in JavaScript, you do, or I guess no, in TypeScript, I guess is the example I should use. You would have like, public something, right? And then you declare the type here. So it would be like name string and then like value number or whatever, right? And then you actually declare the function. And this to me is terrible. Like declaring types like this is basically a struct without being a struct, right? I'm not a fan. Anyway, should be a return value keyword that's a reference return value and memory stack. Yeah. I just don't wind up using it all that much in C# because people don't like it for some reason. But I feel like that's more of a preference thing than an actual like code usability thing in most cases. Okay. So, out resource. I'm going to leave all of this here because this has got some notes on some things we need to do. So I'm going to leave that there. So if it's already loaded, this local acquire thing again, though. I might get rid of the requirement to have local acquire. Right, because I don't want to deal with this. Because then I also have to provide like a callback for when the thing actually loads and then do this, which is poop. Shader system local acquire. Oh, that's got to be renamed too. Yeah, what's local acquire? Exactly, right? It's weird. It's weirdly named. That's why I'm getting rid of it. So, what this means is basically acquiring resources for the local scope, right? Which is now the per draw scope. So what it's essentially doing is it's acquiring or setting up those local level / per draw level resources in the Vulkan backend, aka descriptors is what it's setting up. Multiple returns is a nice feature. See, to me, it could just be a struct, but maybe that's because I'm a boomer. I don't know. Can also have named return values, but again, like, I feel like that could just be defined in a struct. Okay. I'm trying to think about how I want to handle this. So, what was the motivation for waiting until to check to see if it's loaded? If it's not loaded, I think this is probably sitting in the wrong place. I think is what's going on here. Some Game Corp, thank you for the follow. Welcome. How are you doing tonight? Let's see. All right. I kind of want to get rid of all of this, actually. We do need to acquire... This needs to actually happen whether it's loaded or not, actually. This always needs to happen. I know what the problem was here. I know why we had to check for this. Okay, so this is... This shouldn't be here. Yeah, this is what I was thinking. This should not be here at all. This should actually be part of the material resource loader. And the reason I say that is because we shouldn't be checking this like whenever... Wait a minute, no. We can only do that... Oh, shoot. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I'm gonna rubber duck here for a second. So whenever we request a material, right, through this material system acquire, this kicks off this K resource system request, which is to be thought of as asynchronous, right? So what this does is this then reaches into the resource system and says, hey, is a resource with this name already loaded? If it is, cool, it just immediately returns it, we're good. If it's not, then it says, okay, based off of the request info that we pass here, so in this case we know it's a material type, and any other info that could be passed along with this request, pass this off to the appropriate resource handler for that type of thing. That resource handler then has specialized logic in it to be able to say, okay, based on our request info, I need to load assets of some sort, right? And that's specialized per loader, or per handler, I should say. And so what happens there is it then says, okay, I'm going to reach out to the asset system. In the asset system, I'm going to say, hey, I need this asset or these assets. It might be one or multiple. Return those to me when you can. And that's an asynchronous process as well. And so whenever that process completes, which involves reading the asset off of disk, performing any sort of memory copies or data processing that needs to happen for the asset to be considered loaded, that happens. And then once all of that's complete, it reports back to the resource system saying, hey, this asset is loaded. And then the resource system says, okay, handler, we've got this asset loaded. Do something about it. And generally speaking, at that point, most of the time, you'll be loading like one asset. So it'll flip the resource's state to loaded. And at that point, you'll actually have all of the asset data loaded into it. So when we're talking about materials, we have these KMT files. Thank you for the follow, by the way. I guess it doesn't really matter which one I open. I guess I could just open... I probably shouldn't open one of the testbed ones. Let's go to... Yeah, one of these guys. Right, so the material itself is... we have these texture maps, right, for the different channels, and then we have some different properties down here that go along with it. And so when this file is loaded and the structures are stood up that contain all of this data, essentially, then we consider that that resource loaded. Even if the textures it points to are not loaded, the resource itself is loaded. And it takes time to load that stuff off disk, which is why it's going to be asynchronous. It's not currently, but we are going to Jobify it. And so, technically speaking, when we make this resource system request, It does always immediately return a pointer to a resource, but that resource more than likely is not going to be loaded by the time you actually get here, right? So I guess what we might need to do is maybe provide some sort of callback to it to say, hey, whenever this thing is loaded, then we need to essentially do this bit. Do we have... So we do have a user callback, right? So we can specify a callback to be made once the resource is loaded, along with a listener instance. So the listener instance is probably going to be the material instance that we pass along. In fact, I'm pretty sure that is going to be... Yes, that is going to be it. All right, so let's take a look at this, the user callback. So that's the function pointer that we need right there. So we'll just plop this in here. And I'm going to say static, right? Because we don't need this anywhere outside of here. And this is going to be resource loaded user callback. We're going to call this material resource loaded, right? And so we're going to set this equal to material resource loaded. Oops. All right. And then we'll set the listener, which is sort of like a contextual object that gets passed along with it. We'll set the listener instance to out instance. Is that going to be safe, though? Maybe, maybe not. Depending on where out instance comes from. If it's like locally scoped, that's going to be an issue. But I can't see why we would ever have a locally scoped like material system acquire going on. So I think we might be all right with that. So basically what this is... excuse me. What this is going to do is once the material is loaded, then this callback is made. So we can actually just do... grab all of this actually and put it here. And instead of out resource, we're going to get a typed resource, right? Because we just have the sort of base resource type there. So k resource material typed resource. Oops. If I can spell. Equals source material pointer resource. All right. And k resource material instance equals k resource material instance listener. Okay, so we'll get those. And then this is going to be, instead of out resource, it's going to be typed resource. Actually, we could just use resource because we just need a base status there. TCAP with a raid of 18 viewers. Thank you so much for the raid. How's it going? What'd you get up to, TCAP? What kind of shenanigans were you up to on your stream? Shout out to TCAP really quickly. He's a GigaChad developer here on Twitch. He's making all kinds of cool stuff all the time on Twitch. He's making a tower defense game right now. And it's looking pretty good so far. It's coming along nicely. So if you're not following TCAP, you definitely should be. Coffee Lava, good to see you, man. How's it going? People wanted me to keep working on my Let 'em Dare game, so I did a few things there. Oh, okay, that makes sense. I really should participate in one of those at some point, but I just don't have the time. I wish I did. But yeah, welcome, Raiders. Soul Foam, it's good to see you too. How's it going, bud? Welcome, welcome. We are basically refactoring the way that our materials are handled, our material resources, and our ultimately our descriptor updates, or our descriptor sort of scope slash update. We're kind of changing the way that that's handled to make it a little bit more clear when we're looking at code. So that's what we're in the middle of anyway. But yeah, if you guys aren't following TCAP, definitely go do it. Um, he's always awesome to watch. It's one of the most wholesome streams on Twitch. Not toxic at all. All right. Typed resource. I already have that. Coffee lava, exactly. Okay, this is the wrong. Use kname instead. That's actually a fix me. Okay, so we don't have any maps for this. Our out local ID is going to be instance per draw ID, and that's going to be the address of that. Okay, so this will always happen whenever the resource is loaded. This callback will be made, and then we don't have to worry about whether it loads now or loads later. We'll just acquire the resources from the shader whenever the material actually loads. And that should be all we need to do there. The only other thing we need to do here is change this to material instance. And I think that's it. Should be pretty much it. So just to recap, the way that material acquisition works now, as opposed to the way that it used to, is we used to just return a pointer to the resource material itself, and now we actually return. I guess we fill out a instance material instance structure that has a pointer to that, along with some locally changeable material stuff, which we haven't defined yet, but we eventually will. Right. So a good example of this, I guess, would be for if we're using the unlit material type, and we wanted to specify a color for the surface of that per object. That would be a sort of a local level or per draw ID level uniform, right? So that would go perfectly into the new stuff that we're writing. Okay. Shader system is still referencing things as local, which is not a thing anymore. So we really need to update that. I'm going to change this to, I guess, per draw acquire, right? So this is going to be per draw resources. Same for this. Per draw texture maps. All right, and per draw ID, and this is also needs to be out per draw ID. Okay, so in the shader system itself, Coffee Love, I feel like I keep missing your streams, by the way. I keep looking for you to be online, but like you're never online when I'm actually looking. Instance local acquire. Yeah, I need to fix the name of that. That's rubbish. Okay, so you streamed earlier today. Yeah, I I actually spent the day, or part of the day anyways, redoing the brakes on my car, so I wasn't online. But yeah, he's not even streaming when you're not looking to. He's a part timer. Yeah, I'm not even part time, so I can't really talk there. But yeah, usually like when I'm at my computer during the day for work or whatever, I'm always kind of trying to keep an eye out. But like, it's almost like he knew I wasn't going to be at my computer today and dodged it. C++77, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Welcome. Let's see. Got to bounce. It's 4:23 a.m. here. Oof. Yeah, that's late. Have a good one. Hickory, see you later. All right. I think I said per draw acquire for this. No, shader scope local doesn't exist anymore, so we're actually going to have to fix that because we don't have shader scopes anymore. We have update frequencies, which is really what we should have been doing all along. So we have this local instance local acquire, right, which is basically the same acquisition of resources for local versus instance, which is now called group versus per draw. So we really just need to rename this stuff so that it kind of fits that new naming paradigm. So shader update frequency, and I'm going to call this frequency. And then this is just going to be, let's see, I guess we'll say group, I guess per group draw require, per group, per draw require. It's kind of verbose, but I guess it works. So the only thing that we need to change is, I believe, this is going to be frequency. And again, I realize I could use the rename here, but the reason I'm not doing that is because I want the errors to pop up so I see exactly what's getting changed everywhere, and I don't have to really go hunting for it later on. Update frequency. Okay, so this should be per group, and then per draw. Okay, and then the renderer also has stuff that has to be renamed. And that's going to trickle all the way down to the Vulkan renderer. So I'm not going to touch that now, but I am going to put a fix me. Rename these. Okay. So failed to acquire renderer resources for shader. And then it says either instance or local. So in this case, we just need to do frequency. And if the frequency is group, then we'll do group. Otherwise, we'll do per draw. All right. So that's that. And then we rename this to per group per draw acquire. And then this is going to be update frequency per group, update frequency per draw. Okay. So that's good. Instance or local release. I guess we could put an or in here. Per group or per draw acquire. Did it just... There. Let's see. Zachary over on the YouTube side, thank you for the follow, rather. Appreciate that. Okay. So now we have the instance or local release. This is going to be much the same thing. So it's going to be shader update frequency. And then all we have to do here is do update frequency per group and then per draw. I guess I'll put another fix me here. Rename these. Okay, so we have that, and then we also have this one down here, which is kind of the same thing as above, which is shader update frequency per group. So if it is, it'll be group or, oops, per draw. All right. And so what I'll do is I'll actually fix these errors first, and then I'll rename the function. Update frequency per group and update frequency per draw. And then I can rename this, and we're going to say per group or per draw release. Cool. So some more shader scope stuff. Most of our scope stuff, or scoping issues rather, are going to be in the shader system itself. And I think there's a couple places in the renderer that use it, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Okay, so config no longer has scope. It also has frequency. So that's going to be true there, and that's also going to be true here. And then this is going to be update frequency group. Oh, wait a minute. Was that local before? Yeah, that's wrong. That should be per draw. Cannot add a sampler at per draw scope. Actually, that's wrong. We can actually do that now. They just don't go to the push constants, right? So didn't we actually update this? Internal uniform add. I'm gonna put a fix me here for now as well. This should work. We're gonna have to do a fix me pass before we merge this branch for sure. So shader update frequency. Wait a minute, was that global? Yeah. Update frequency. This is going to be per frame. So global is now per frame. Push to the per frame list. Okay. So again, these are going to wind up being renamed. Per frame texture count. And then we have in the shader we actually call them global texture maps, and that's not technically correct either. Trying to think if we actually have any shaders that use that at the moment. So this is kind of like, there's some of the stuff in here that references instance, global, and local is all going to have to be changed as well. Which actually includes quite a bit of stuff. All right, so I guess I should probably just rip the Band-Aid off and do it now. Even though it's just a rename. It's going to be confusing if I know. X Tedious, thank you for the follow. Welcome. Hope you're doing well tonight. What NeoVim plugin are you using for the rename? That's my LSP doing it. / I think part of it goes through LSP Saga too, I believe. But yeah, it works pretty well actually. I'm pretty surprised. I will show you. Well, I'll do one better actually. I actually have my NeoVim config. I wrote up an article on my website. If the bot will wake up and actually drop a link for you there. If it doesn't, in a second, I'll drop it myself. There it goes. Yeah. So that article has like an explanation of all the stuff that I use. And then a link to my NeoVim config. It is a couple months out of date. I haven't updated it in a bit. So I need to get in there and do that. But like it's 95% of the way there. You might have to tweak a thing or two to your liking. But yeah, no problem. All right. Oh, we're in the middle of an ad break and I didn't catch it. Tisk, tisk. Well, all right. I guess we're just going to crack on because it's only got 30 seconds left, so. Suppose I could wait for the 30 seconds, but. Excuse me. Ugh. All right. Ad break is almost done on the Twitch side. All right, cool. Ads are dead. All right, so I don't think I'm going to do the rename here. I think I'm just going to type it once in here so that it breaks everything that uses it on purpose. So we're going to call this per frame texture maps. And this is going to be per frame texture map pointers. So we have that. Those are basically texture maps that are bound / used once per frame. So they have a very low update frequency. And then we have instance texture count and local texture count. And we also have local UBO stride here as well, which is global. Oh man, we got a whole bunch of stuff in here I need to rename. Because we have global UBO stride and then local as well, which is not a thing anymore. This is going to break a whole bunch of stuff in code, but it is what it is. So instead of instance texture count, we are going to have per group texture count. Okay. Bound instance ID. This is going to be bound group ID for the currently bound group. Local texture count. This is going to be per draw texture count. This is going to be the number of per draw textures. Bound per draw ID. The identifier of the currently bound per draw. That doesn't, I guess, resource. Okay. Now we get to uniforms. So we can see here that we have global uniform count, global uniform sampler count, global sampler indices. And then we have the same for instance uniforms and global or local uniforms. So these really need to be renamed as well. So instead of global, we're going to say per frame. And there, and there, and there, and there. Right? So those are the per frame ones. I'm just going to space these out to make it a little bit easier to read. All right, so instance, that's going to be, per group. Per group. Per group. And per group samplers, right? And then local is going to be per draw uniform count. So this is going to be per draw non-sampler uniforms, and then per draw sampler uniforms, and then per draw samplers for fast lookups, and per draw sampler indices. Okay. I think that might be it. Nope, it's not it. We have these up here too. Okay, so global UBO size. This is going to be per frame UBO size. Per frame UBO stride. And the uniform buffer object. And then the offset of that as well. All right. And then the actual size of the uniform, the instance uniform. Wow, why did we just call this? Yeah, okay, so this should be per group. Right, this should be per group. Not sure why we just called it UBO. Per group. All right, and then local is going to be, oh shoot, I just canceled out of that and I didn't mean to. Dang it. All right, so this is going to be I guess I should be doing it. Wow, what did that do? I suppose triple column's fine for now. All right, I need per group UBO offset. Wait a minute, is that should be local though? Not per group, per draw. Okay. So that should be good. And now we can actually continue on with our updates in here, which, as you can see, the error count has gone up by quite a bit. So we're going to have to deal with that. Alternative time zone wanderer here. Thanks for the past few years worth of knowledge that I'm partway through. Oh, awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And welcome. Yeah, I guess I'm assuming we don't align time zones very often. So, but yeah, I appreciate you being here. Okay. So I guess the next thing to do actually this needs to be per frame texture count. Our config still references max global textures and max instance textures. Oh, we didn't add anything to max. We didn't add like a max local textures, did we? Do we need that? I don't know that we do. So I'm going to rename this to per frame textures. And then, oops, I want to rename this per draw. Or not, no, not per draw, per group. Textures. Per group and per frame. Oh, God, I keep hitting escape by accident. Really need to stop doing that. Okay. Did save the changes, though. Good. All right. So, down here we have global texture maps on the shader. That should be per frame texture maps. Instance texture count is going to be per group texture count. And then this is also going to be per group. This should be not global. This should be per frame. Instance texture count is going to be per group texture count. And then this is actually going to wind up being the same thing here and here. Okay. Crack on. Internal uniform add. Okay, so I think this is all just going to be scoping stuff. So shader uniform is an entry. Okay, so these just need to be changed to frequency. And then we're checking here if the frequency is shader update frequency. Shoot, what was that? That was global. Shader update frequency per frame. And then this one is going to be, instead of local, it's going to be shader update frequency per draw. Per draw. There we go. This needs to be frequency. Instead of local UBO size, it's going to be per draw UBO size. Frequency. Per frame UBO size and per group UBO size. Okay, so most of this is just a massive renaming. Okay, so shader update frequency per frame is this one. Per group is this one. And per draw is that one. And so global UBO size is going to be per frame. This is going to be per group. And this is going to be per draw. All right. Per draw, so that's going to be actually kind of the same thing here. bound instance ID. So bound instance ID is going to be bound per group ID. Do we not have... I thought we did. Oh, bound group ID. That's what we called it. Okay. I guess that's fine. We should also do bound per draw ID to that as well. This is inconsistent though. Because we have group ID here and then per draw ID here. Let's rename this. And we'll call this per group ID. Okay. So global texture maps, this is going to be per frame texture maps. This is going to be per frame UBO size, per group UBO size, per draw, which that's actually still, that should probably be told by the back end. Should be determined by the back end and reported thusly. Okay. Narrowing down on the error number. So global texture maps is going to be per frame texture maps. Okay, so there's that. Bound instance ID. So this is going to be bound per group ID. And then this bound local ID will be per draw ID. I should probably also rename these functions. Bind instance, this should be bind per, I guess maybe bind group. And then bind draw. Draw ID, I guess. And then instead of instance ID here, this is going to be group ID. All right. Oh, we have apply global instance and local as well. So this needs to be apply per frame. Apply per group. Apply per draw. Let's see. Zeniac Games, I like that emote that you used there. I haven't seen that one before. All right. So, instance uniform sampler count. This should be per group sampler count. Uniform sampler count. Instance sampler indices. This is going to be per group Is that it? I think that's it for this file. I'll be dipped. Okay. Let's build. Alright, so now we're back to the material system, which is probably bleating because, well, we're not finished rewriting that stuff in there. So materials system. 644. I see. Okay. I think this is part of the stuff that we were in the middle of refactoring that we didn't quite get to yet. So 584. And skip right to it. Okay. Default PBR material. That should be a K resource material. And the default PBR material, I think, is actually already a pointer, so we don't need this address of operator there. And then there's all the rest of this stuff that we actually have to figure out. So we have to port this to like the new method of doing things, which we're not going to make it through tonight. So this is actually, I think, where we're going to wind up leaving off. So we made some pretty good progress tonight, though. H. Mendoza, how's it going? Good to see you. I'm not displeased with the progress we made. We actually made quite a few code changes, right? So, you know, those are all the files we changed tonight, which is, well, I guess some of it's from last night too, but it's pretty significant regardless. However, I don't think I'm going to commit this yet because this is so horribly broken and in the middle of a renaming refactor. I don't think I'm going to push this yet. So what I'm going to do is, if I get a little bit of time, I'll work on this off camera and finish like the renaming effort of stuff here and get this building and see if I can't get the material instance stuff working before we move on to the next resource site. So that's kind of the plan anyway. All right, so I'm about out of time for tonight, so I think what I'm going to do is find somebody to raid. And hopefully we can find something that's kind of reasonably related to what we're doing. Let's see who's on. Let's see. So I'm hoping to find something that's kind of like similar to what we're doing, like C or C++ dev. I don't know that there is anyone on that's doing that tonight, though. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. Welcome. All right. I think what we're going to do is... actually, hold that thought for a second. I just want to look through and see if there's like anything. I think I know who I'm going to raid. I just want to keep looking for just a second here. Okay. So I'm going to raid, if I can find him in here again. You know what? Actually, I take that back. We're going to raid a channel that is a good cause that I like to support, actually, and I haven't done it in a while. We are going to raid Alveus Sanctuary. It's an animal rescue for exotic animals. It's a non-profit organization. So they take in animals that cannot survive in the wild, and a lot of them are exotics that are very difficult and expensive to take care of. So just by having the stream up, we're able to support the cause there. And sometimes there's pretty cool camera views of some of the animals that they have there. So we're gonna raid that for tonight, and yeah, I will catch you guys on the next stream. YouTube guys, I will send you a link as well to this if you wanted to tune into that. But yeah, that's going to do it. If you haven't already, I would greatly appreciate a follow either on the YouTube side, the Twitch side, or if you're so inclined, both. That helps me grow the channel. And yeah, looking to reach more people, get more people into game engine dev. So, all right, thank you all, and I'll see you guys next time.